Hello and welcome. It's been a long time coming, but Delta Motor Racing is back for the Australian Grand Prix at the virtual Albert Park circuit. Tonight, it's all about the best of the best, the cream of the crop. It's Tier 1, and the action should be fierce as the drivers look to get a good start to the season. As for the circuit itself, it's 5.3 kilometers of tarmac, takes you around 6 left-handers and 10 right-handers as you loop around the lake in the middle. The surface is smooth and can be incredibly slippery when it's wet. It's also almost entirely level, making the cars look glued to the road until, of course, they're not. We've seen plenty of incidents over the 24 races here. Ralf Schumacher was airborne into the first corner back in 2002, and who could forget Fernando Alonso's huge incident from 2016. With all that said and done, my name is Tom Davis, and I'll be taking you through all of tonight's action with the help of my fabulous co-commentator, Biggles. How are you doing?
Doing good, thank you very much. Lovely to be here.
Yeah, and qualifying just getting underway, and it'll be interesting to see what the drivers' approaches are, because remember, it's the first race of the season. They'll want to get a good haul of points in, but at the same time, you can't afford to not score. So it's a tricky situation where obviously you want to do as well as you humanly can, but there is a limit to that at the very least. Who do you reckon will take a little look on board with as this session begins?
Not quite sure yet. Obviously, I'm really not sure of all these drivers, so once we do start beginning there, we're going to try to get that working there.
Yeah, of course. And it's a stacked lineup, as you'd expect, from the very, very top of Delta Motor Racing. You've got Polish karting representatives, you've got former Tier 1 champions, people from all across the Formula 1 esports world, from Apex Online and ORL. If you name any letter and then RL, you've got a driver from there competing here. If you've been following the leagues that I've been to commentary on the past, you'll notice we got Vexit. That is, of course, Vex Ashton or Luke from previous series as well. He took the no assist tier down to the wire last season, so it'll be great to see how he does. In terms of the rules itself, we're looking at pretty stock for this sort of stuff. All the cars are equalized. We got a 20-minute qualifying session or thereabouts, and then a 50% race. So we got plenty of time for strategy to take hold, and plenty of time for the drivers to try and put a lap in qualifying as well. So it should be exciting. The cars just getting out on the track. And of course, they all look brand new. That's another advantage. A few of the cars, not too different. Mercedes looks broadly similar, but a few of them, big changes in terms of their design. You'll notice Renault have a completely different nose this year, as do Racing Point. And there's a few controversies surrounding their new nose, to say the least, as well. And of course, Williams in real life, they've got a brand new livery, and they're looking a little bit quicker than they have in the past as well. So maybe that'll change the driver's mindset if you were driving for Williams. A few guys just starting their laps, in particular, Ulas. He is from Turkey, driving for Renault. Both of the Renault team, they are from Turkey, and they are teaming up together for the very first time. So it'll be interesting to hear what language they talk in when they're in their own little team chat, for example, because it genuinely might not be English, and that's not something we see too often in these kind of European-based leagues. In terms of lap times, what you're looking for, anything in the low 21s, low 22s would be pretty solid, that sort of range. Of course, brand new game, we're not too sure of the physics yet, so it could go either way on that front as well. But that's kind of around the lap record time, so you would expect something in that region to be what the drivers are looking to set. We've also got tyres, of course. Exact same as last year. You got softs, mediums, and hards. Take your pick as to which you actually want to use. And in qualifying, you'll probably see a range of strategies as well, just as we have throughout almost every single race last year. However, at the moment, everybody's out on the softs, which is kind of notable. And Ulas, who I was just taking a look at, he's stopped on track, so he's not too happy with that one at the moment, to say the least. How are you getting on, Biggles? You feel excited for this season?
I'm super excited, obviously, too, in my home track down in Melbourne, and I have actually visited this track a few times before. So I've actually had the luxury of being in the paddock pass that's above the Ferrari garage for a couple of years, so that was quite nice.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But more fun, really, out on the circuit on, I can't believe which turn it is off the top of my memory right now, but sitting up in the hill there, watching the drivers take up one of those high-speed corners as they go through it. Obviously, too, someone would run out, crash out there on that corner, so that was super exciting. But yeah, obviously, the start of this racing league season, the Tier 1, 2, the pinnacle, the top of the guys, the fastest, should be interesting.
Yeah, it should be really, really good. I believe Vex is just about to come across the line for his lap. What's it going to be for Ferrari? He comes across in 8th, which is pretty respectable. Like we said, the time should keep increasing throughout this session. Firstly, because the drivers are still adapting to the game, getting used to some of the new mechanics and how it all functions. And also the classic banker lap situation where you just want to have a lap put in so as then you can try and improve it rather than it being all or nothing come your final run of the session. We got one of our Mercedes drivers, a name that I'm sure is going to be a bit of nightmare for me as we progress through this season. This name is KL4P3K. That is supposed to be Klapek. He represents Poland karting under their karting division, so he's got definitely the pedigree to compete for this championship, and it's a strong lineup for Mercedes across the board as well, so we'll see if we can get on board with the Merc as he comes around just through the middle sector at the moment. In terms of what's slightly different compared to last year, the big one of course is the ERS deployment. There's now an overtake button. You press to enable the overtake, you press again to disable it. It's not a hold down like Courage used to be, so it'll be interesting to see how that changes as well, because it's now much easier to get that additional electrical energy as Klapek comes through the final corner. DRS wide open, revs it all the way up, almost 200 miles an hour as he approaches turn number 1. You brake turning nice and early, flick it through the left-hander, and then the DRS pops open once again. Down this back, not quite straight, but near enough, before you break into turn number 3. This one a tight, tricky right-hander. You need to try and get the power down onto the road as efficiently as you can. Use a little bit of exit curb through 4, and then 5 is flat out now. There was maybe a little bit of a lift last year. This year, no such thing. He's purple in the first sector as Klapek, so he's on a good one as he sweeps through turn number 5 and in towards turn 6. Another one of these tricky sections. You flick it in for the right, turn it out for the left again. And that one's just a little bit slower than the beginning lap, so we might see a few drivers kind of drawing themselves in and just braking a little bit too late there as the race progresses. You then come through this deceivingly difficult section in the middle there. That 11-12 chicane almost flat, but if you get it just a little bit offline, you'll find that the rear is trying to come around and say hello to the front. This lap's going to be invalidated for Klapek. I think he just went a little bit outside track limits of that chicane, but it was looking pretty solid. Purple in the first sector, and he'll come round to complete it, so we'll get some sort of indication of what could have been for the Mercedes driver, despite it not popping up on the time screens. Instead of 118.9 on that lap, so had he completed it, he'd be almost a 10th clear at the top of the field. So you can guarantee he'll be punching himself a little bit after that one, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused there. You said Klapek. Did you say 118? I'm seeing a 119.2 is the fastest lap time.
Yeah, we've got 119.0 for Pan Pernick at the top of the session.
Yeah. So when you, if I missed it, sorry to interrupt you there. If I missed the names there, can you, if you want, specifically tell what the position that the person is currently in at the moment? So,
yes. So
rather than the names, while I get used to the names, because I'm still a little...
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Klapek, currently P20. He came around, set that lap, but it was in fact just a little bit invalid. So he's gone round. He might try another one, however, it's likely to just be come round and into the pits, because I'm not sure he realised that that had been invalidated when he was attempting to put it in.
Oh, and it looks like Pan right now is as fast as first sector, P1.
Yeah, it's looking very, very strong for Williams, and it would be good to see that livery right up there. Of course, got the rainbow on the halo to represent the We Races 1 initiative, and he's also purple in Sector 2, if only for a moment before I believe he was bested by the Renault just behind him. Hugely tight competition, almost the entire top 10 separated by a second. Comes through the tricky right-hander. That one tends to draw you in, and then this one you want to accelerate through before you break into the left-hander. It's so easy to lock the inside front here on the power. Get it all the way out to left so you can swing it through the right-hander. A small lift in the middle, and then use all the overtake on the way to the line. What's it going to be for Pan? He improves. 189. It's about a tenth quicker, and it just pushes the boat that little bit further out for the chasing pack.
Amazing pace, isn't it? Lighting up the timing boards there. 2 tenths off. And Addy there in the McLaren driver, P2. Who else is in a flying lap here? Some guys at Drain in P12. Looks like he's improving, but not setting purples, but setting personal bests.
Yeah, Drain's gonna come in. He wasn't happy with that one. In terms of people to watch, we'll take a look at Vexit. Of course, like we mentioned, he's been looking relatively quick. We caught the end of his first lap that popped him up into what was then 8th. He's been pushed down a little further into 9th, and he was able to take the no assists tier last year down to the final corner of the final race. You can bet that he'll be hoping to carry that success across to tier 1. DRS wide open as he comes down the straight. Fortunately, I believe that was Williams in the background. Just gets out of the way nice and simple. Really nice, clean line through turns 1 and 2, and that's absolutely crucial if you want to put a quick lap together. It's way more easy to lose time in that first chicane than it is to gain it. He uses 3rd gear through turn 3 as opposed to Klapik earlier on was using 4th out there, but it didn't seem to compromise him getting the power down, which was good to see. Comes through the first sector then, and it's a big improvement for himself. Not quite purple, but he was 2 tenths up through that one, so now the pressure's on, and he will start thinking to himself, I've just got to complete the lap. Even if I do exactly what I did last time at this stage, it'll move me up into P9 again, which might be enough to kind of give him that additional grid spot. He's now dropped down another place as Econi pops up into P9 for Alpha Tauri, I believe that is. Vexit, however, still looking strong, using a lot of curb on exit, but it didn't unsettle the car, and that's the crucial point. As long as the car is settled, you can get the power down and everything will be okay. Through this right-hander lift on entry, you can hear it revving really high as he hits the downshift, avoiding that inside curve sensibly so at the penultimate corner, and then he's almost flat through the final one. Foot to the floor. What's it going to be for Luke in the Ferrari as he comes across the line? It's good enough for P8, and that puts him back where he was beforehand. So everybody just kind of raising the bar a little bit and then answering the people around them as this session develops. 5.5 minutes left on the clock, so in theory enough time to get 2 laps in, but it'll probably just be 1 for most of these guys, wouldn't you think?
Definitely. It looks like some of the other guys, obviously they had to get out there and set some times there now as we're on board with P4. That's the Williams driver of Mizzo. See what he can do. He is almost half a second down from the leaders. But still showing some very good pace there.
Yeah, it was a small improvement for the first sector, about half a tenth gains there. So you'll be feeling pretty happy, but half a tenth, it's so easy to either lose that again or suddenly take that momentum and transition it into a fantastic lap.
And in saying that, some idiot setting the fastest purple sector behind him. So he's on it blistering right now. Some idiots in P6. And the Haas could be set for a pole here. Set a personal best, 21.5. And set the fastest first sector. We'll see what he can do about the all-important final 3rd sector.
Yeah, he's looking pretty comfortable. He's actually just behind the Williams we mentioned before, so potentially able to pick up a distant toe down both the home straight and that kind of back DRS section. Using a lot of curb on exit, using all the road to try and get the power down as early as possible. Not quite good enough. 3 tenths up on his own best that time around. Gives him enough for P4. And remember, that is just on the cusp, meaning that he's on the 2nd row as opposed to the 3rd, which is a big gain, to be honest. It's just visually less cars in front of you. And from P4, you're looking at challenging for those podium spots, rather than P5 and 6, you're looking not to be overtaken from behind a lot of the time.
Certainly there as NR in the number 3 position currently at the moment, and Paul looking for on a good lap. Let's see. It's obviously nobody's taking the gamble at the moment on the mediums. They obviously don't have the pace there. Everybody is going to be using the softs. Most of them have done about 4 laps, let's say now, on these soft tyres overall. So they're boxing and putting fresh tyres on.
Yeah, and Andy had a small lock-up there. However, he was about a tenth or 2 up, and that's cost him. He's now about 100th down on his own time as he just gets a little bit wiggly through the right-hander at turn 12. DRS wide open once again, braking at that 50-meter board. It's ridiculous to think how late these cars can brake from what is almost 200 miles an hour, and there, over the track limits, pushing just that little bit too hard. If he dives into the pits now, he will get a chance to come around again, and that's exactly what he's going to do. So he'll come in, put another fresh set of softs on, presumably, and he'll have another chance at this one yet, for sure.
His teammate, SOR, back in 19th, he's yet to set a time, but set fastest purple sector. So, but not so fast in the middle section as he crosses the line.
It's a pretty solid lap there. Iason moving up into P6, and you got to be happy with that one. We'll keep an eye on the Mercedes boys, because we mentioned they've got a strong lineup, but both of them haven't yet to set a time. They're on their outlaps, but they won't get another chance after this one, so it's all or nothing. Klapek in P20, he's the first one out on track, so we'll see what he's doing as he comes through on his kind of warm-up lap as such. This one all about getting the tyres into that perfect operating window. Remember, last year the tyre blanket temperature was reduced, so the past couple of years you've really had to work to get them into their range, and it brings into question the DAS steering system, the DAS, which everybody's been talking about. Nobody really understands apart from whichever crazy man managed to design that. But, of course, you don't have to worry about that in game. The cars are equalized, and it's a bit too complicated for the game anyway, but we don't even actually understand what it's doing. Through turn 1, a huge water curve for Klapek. That's more the line I was expecting when we came into this session, and nobody seems brave enough to take it, but he's definitely been putting the laps in. I believe one of his other series, having already raced at this circuit in the current season on F1 2020, nice and clean through that slow bit of the first sector, and that's all you need to do. You won't find time in there, and of course, he's not up or down on his time yet, because he physically can't be. However, what he is up on is the overall time. Purple in sector number 1, braking now in sector 2, and again, it just looks clean. He's happy to aggressively attack that curb. He's got the front end grip, and that is crucial round here as you come through all of these left-right complexes. Purple in sector 2. Can he hold it together? He had this last time around, and it was in this part of the lap where it all got invalidated. Descending, braking so late, a little bit of understeer on entry, that could cost him. He will be just a couple of milliseconds slower back on the power. He's then braking into the final corner, so clean, on the power once again, 3rd, 4th, 5th. 6th gear as you exit the corner, DRS open, use all of that electrical energy available to you. Change up to 8th just before the line, and it's enough for pole. A 118.830 puts him just over a 10th clear. However, there are few cars currently on outlaps, notably Pan Pernick there. He just about made it across in time. So the Williams, through the first couple of sectors, has he got anything to answer from P2? He was previously leading. He's now got to try and fight back for that position. So much wheel spear and revving it out as he comes through that first section. I'm not sure he's quite going to have this. He's accelerating through 700ths up on his time at the moment. Remember, he's only got to find a 10th, so he's already 70% of the way there. He comes through the right-hander, braking now into this tricky corner. You then accelerate out of turn 10. That section there, turns 9 and 10 that we just came through, that's normally a car park. All of this, of course, a street circuit, despite feeling quite flowing and open. You then come out of that one and descend your way into the last part of the lap. A short little rise and back down, however, hardly noticeable in these cars. Through this part of it, then you're coming through the tight right-hander. This is the important bit. This bit will play on your nerves the whole way around. He's got that braking correct. And then he'll come round into the final corner on the power, up into 6th already, 7th, and he might just about reach 8th before the line. Is it enough for the Williams? It is! He goes half a 10th quicker than Klapek, improving on his own time by a 10th and a half. That came together with a purple final sector to give him provisional pole. I don't think anybody else is currently on a lap good enough to beat him.
Yep.
And in fact, it should be Williams on pole, Mercedes P2, Williams 3rd, and McLaren 4th. We did talk about Hoeni. Hoeni was also setting a lap for the second as Mercedes. He was only good enough for P12, and he'll be a little bit disappointed with that. He's normally very quick, having competed in online racing leagues and Apex Online Racing as well. His missile there spins out the final corner, losing his front wing. So, very exciting qualifying session. And it looks to be a solid race. The top few guys covered by such a small margin. You're talking a second covering the top 15 cars, which is just incomprehensible, isn't it?
Absolutely amazing. I was just about to say that. Like, this is the kind of pace that the separation gaps that you see in with the top esports drivers, obviously in that kind of pace. And then we obviously had a few people there at the back there who have retired early. Either they might have had some issues or weren't quite happy with the setup. Sometimes even drivers forget to choose the right setup with the nerves. So there you have it. So it's going to be an exciting race, and I'm pretty sure we're going to see a safety car with that drivers being bunched up that close.
Yeah, of course. Now, time to play my favorite game. Biggles, who do you think has the fastest lap in the race around this Albert Park circuit? Just all-time Formula 1, other race series included if you want, however, I doubt they'll go quicker. Who has the best race lap around the track?
In the game, or what are you referring to?
Real Formula 1. Just
real Formula 1?
History. Who do you think has done the quickest lap around here during the race?
I think it might be Montoya or Schumacher, but I'm not sure.
You know, you were up there. It was Michael Schumacher. He said a 1:24.1 back in 2004. Remember that F2004? Just absolutely ridiculous car. And that lap record is held. And for anybody newer to Formula 1 who doesn't quite know the history, there's a few reasons for this. Firstly, we now have to use the same setups in the race as we do in qualifying, so you don't get a chance to kind of change it or perfect it on the morning for the given track conditions. Also, they had refueling back then, so you could put on fresh tires and have a low fuel load, which would contribute you just having everything you would possibly want to put in a quick lap, whereas now, of course, you tend to either have fresh tires or low fuel, which can cost you a lot of time, bearing in mind that the fuel use every single lap is 1.72 kilograms, so that's about half a tenth every single time around here, which is somewhat ridiculous to say the least.
Exactly. Now, we have a full line of cars that are in the game, which is good, so no glitches there. They're starting their formation lap, so they got to get, obviously, the temperature into those tires, get familiar with the track, kind of just start settling in now, get comfortable, because you're going to be obviously sitting in front of your steering wheel and getting ready to race. We got a couple of different tire changes there as well, so start to set up the broadcast window here.
Yeah, of course. So most of the guys outside of the top 10 have used that free tire choice that they have available to them. We got mediums, a single hard runner, and then softs only for Wazik in 16th and for Ulas in P20. This formation lap, a bit of a paradox, because like we've mentioned time and time again, you want to get temperature into the tires and brakes, and temperature is just a fancy word for energy. Your only source of energy is the engine, but you want to keep that one cool because that one needs to be cold to work properly, so you need to try and use minimal energy and just put it all into the tires and brakes, which actually takes a lot of skill on these outlaps. You've also got to talk about just making sure you're within decent range of the car in front, or if you're at the back, you can drop a little bit further away and force the guys in front of you to wait longer on the grids as their tires and engines all just drop out of that operating window. Your leader then pulls up onto the grid. It's a Williams in P1, Mercedes P2, and another Williams P3, so it's looking good for them as it stands. But points, they're not scored in qualifying, they are scored only in the race, and we might see a little bit of a battle develop between these guys. Qualifying, of course, only a second separating your top 10, your top 11 drivers, which is just ridiculous. We got new cars. It is a brand new game, and it's a brand new season here at Delta Motor Racing. The last few guys lining up on the grid. We got the red lights coming on. Will the red mist descend as the feet hit the floor? And we are go for Delta Motor Racing Race 1 of Season 2. The drivers, their way on the descent into the first corner, and I think I might have had a little bit of a lag out there as the Williams just comes through the first corner. It was so tight, but a good start for Panpernik. Klapek holds it together. Mizzo's still there, and NR Andy, he's managed to defend his place from Hugo's, but it was a tight battle. Has to squeeze him out a little bit through turn number 4. We got yellows as well. I think Dane has been involved in that one. The Mercedes of Hawaii's dropped so far back. He was clearly involved in a little bit of an incident there, to say the least. It was a start as we expected, you'd have to say, wouldn't it?
Oh, for sure. It looks like definitely there's some. That's in, I think that's FIA there. F1A, sorry, in 13th. He's dropped. Yeah, front wing's gone there completely there. That's the Alfa Romeo, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, and we got a virtual safety car. So, guys, slowing down just for a moment. I want to check, just because obviously new game, new tech stuff. I got the leader just coming down into the first of the double right-handers in Sector 3, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yes.
Yep.
Now into the second one. Cool, because I had a little bit of a lag off the line and wanted to make sure everything was working good. Virtual safety car is now gone, and we're back to F1 commentary. It's all about that 1 second window. Klapek right on the back of that Williams, not quite dropping away yet, but a good exit from the final corner means that gap is up to 0.8 of a second as they come across the line. So he's got to try and just pull out that little bit more before that drag reduction system becomes available on lap number 3. Predictive pit stop strategies, we're talking softs to hards, or potentially even soft to medium, as SOR lies in, picks up a penalty for speeding in the pit lane as a bunch of guys come in to try and deal with some damage. And Hoeni, he's had enough. That's going to be at least a minimum of 1 car scoring for Mercedes, but this front battle, Panpernik's trying to make hay whilst the sun shines, and the dirty air effect is a little bit stronger in this game. Just from playing it myself over yesterday, it is notable that following a car through high-speed corners can be pretty difficult, and this is a high downforce track with high-speed corners, so if it's going to have an effect anywhere, it's going to be here. Slightly further down in the field, you've got a close battle for 6th position. That Haas there coming under a little bit of threat from behind, although he's pulling out, and in fact he's now trying to apply the pressure to that Alfa Romeo in front. Some idiot closing in on Ruthful ahead, and that's all a little bit of a train behind NR Andy, so NR Andy potentially struggling with the pace just a touch at the beginning of this race, or maybe even Mizzo in that one as the front 2 attempt to make a little bit of a getaway. Gap's all pretty even at this stage, and as DRS becomes available, we can expect that they'll just begin to come down, and all of these 8/10 gaps, 9/10 gaps, well, suddenly you'll be thinking, oh, I could have him into turn 1, I could make a move here, and it is fantastic to be back. Everyone who's joining, thank you ever so much. My name is Tom Davis. I'm joined in the comm box by fantastic new commentator for this season, Biggles. He's a tech genius, and he's also a bit of a wizard with words, so Biggles.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah,
who's going to win the race?
Testing the new telemetry information that we've got here as the overlay, and as we're talking about the Williams, the Mercedes driver there in P2, his last lap, we've got the new telemetry there, it shows the last lap was 1:23.3, but he has 3 seconds of time penalties already, so that's quite interesting, as he's now falling a little bit out behind our leader.
Yeah, and he'll have to serve that one in his pit stop, so when it comes to the end of the race, he'll be racing for position, but it is a little bit annoying knowing that that's going to have to weigh on you throughout this one. And whilst a normal pit stop, you know, you're talking about undercuts, overcuts, he's talking about trying not to lose at this stage 5 positions, 6 positions to the cars behind with that penalty. Pit stops themselves, we're looking at around about 17, 18 seconds worth of time loss in them. So that is a reasonable amount, and that'll be the gap that Panpernik's looking to extend. We've done the first stage, which is getting it up to over 1 second, and a mistake there for Klapek. Ran it into the grass on the exit. Car behind has DRS, and suddenly Williams are pushing for a 1-2. This will be a fantastic start to the season for them. Mizzo hunting down Klapek, and we'll ride on board with Mizzo if that's possible.
Yes,
coming through turn number 5 and now breaking into 6. Klapek just seems to be struggling a little bit. It's understeering in front of him, and he can't seem to control that front end as the tyres potentially already drifting away. The softs, not renowned for their durability around tracks where there's so much load on them through these sweeping long corners. Mizzo's still there, 3/10 the gap to the Mercedes in front, and they'll have DRS. You just got to get through this chicane without losing too much time, and we've done exactly that. DRS pops open. Overtake not being used at this stage. It's not worth it because this right-hander is ultimately incredibly difficult to get a pass done into. Is now Panpernik picks up a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. So these guys potentially a little bit rusty in terms of what you're allowed to do and what you're not, because now Mizzo, assuming there's no time penalties for them, they're leading the race.
Yes, correct. No time penalties for Mizzo. Just pull up the onboard graphic there. So that's handy. He's obviously now, he's within 1.9 of the leader. And as you can see, this battle right now with Klapex up ahead there. So it's only a matter of time whether or not he can get past. Where can he choose it? He's got a lot of VRS there. So what do you think his best opportunity is to make a pass right now?
Overtakes, obviously you're looking at the DRS zones. So in theory, turn 13 at the end of the lap, and then turns 1 and 3. So we're already past turn 1, we're already past turn 3. If you want to get it done this time around, you're going to have to sit pretty until the end of the lap. A good run through here, in theory a move is possible because the slipstream is pretty strong around this sleeping right-hander, but nowhere near close enough there. In fact, the gap's been extended by about a 10th since this stage last time around.
I just want to cut you off there for a second. This is a big battle there between, looks like 9th, 10th and 11th here, as they've all bunched up together.
Yeah, Vexit closing in, putting the pressure on from behind, and in fact, Ulas is in that battle as well. Remember, Ulas started P20, and the soft tire might have been the correct choice there, just allowing them to push through the field. So, who's going to give way first then? You got TNS leading the way in the AlphaTauri, and there comes the roof. Vexit down the inside, it's robust, not going to get it done. A little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact still on the inside. Into turn number 14, more contact there side by side. A little bit of Bargy, a little bit of RG there as well. The Renault of Ulas not quite able to follow through, but he'll have the DRS. All this has allowed Felix Lundberg to just get away a little bit at the front of this battle. And now Vexit's got to do all the work because you're not within DRS of the car in front is there. Ulas gets the move done as well. And TNS F1 will be so frustrated with themselves there. Arguably, you could have just let Vexit go. Vexit was always going to make that one a robust move. We know that's his driving style. We saw it all the way through no assist last season. If Vexit feels they have the pace and you leave just a smidgen of room, they're going to put the car in it. And if you don't get out of the way, then there might be a collision, and it will be ultimately your fault. Just slightly further up the field. Battle for 6th position as well. Ruthful even closer to the back of that Haas than we had before. This one gonna be hard to keep your bearings on because we got 2 white and red cars predominantly, but they're coming through 11 and 12. Notably, 11 and 12, not actually where the road goes there. The road itself around this lake in the park, it uses what is the slip roads there because that one is too open to be safe as a public road. So there's an interesting and completely useless fact for you. As they come around, a little bit of a lock-up from the Alfa Romeo. 5 laps on these softs, so you will be losing a little bit, not so much of the grip at this stage, but of the feeling. So you lose a little bit of confidence, and it just becomes harder and harder to push. But it's at the front now, where it's all coming together. P2 and P3 are nose to tail. We talked about Mizzo, it was about 3/10, then it was 4/10, and now it's back down, it's underneath 2/10 for a moment. And then it comes up just a little bit as you reach this slower part of the track, and there Ulas potentially letting frustration get the better of them. 3-second time penalty for the Renault driver, and that'll be annoying having started from the back. Klapek now, however, definitely taking some defensive lines in 2nd position. You can see that gap to the leader just coming up lap by lap now, as Mizzo does not fall away in the first sector, and is being held up to the extent where now NR Andy and Hugo's are coming to join the party. So you got 3 cars covered by around about 1.2 seconds as we come into Sector 2. Mercedes at the front holding them up. That's not something you'd hear in real F1, but it's something you might hear here because, of course, cars are equalized, so we're going to have completely fair racing. A little bit of a mistake from the leader up ahead, throws up the dirt into Klapek's face, but no time was lost in that interaction. And there, a huge lockup from Klapek into turn number 15, and there comes the box. That's why there was a lockup. We knew that it was possible. Panpernik also going to come in, and this releases Mizzo. We'll see if we can go on board with Mizzo on this lap, because this is going to be a 1-lap push to see if you can find enough time to get past both cars in front potentially, remembering that both of those guys have 3-second time penalties. They're still stationary in the pits, and Mizzo is already descending into turn number 3. Nice tidy turning, and Hugo's is trying the same thing just behind him. And Hugo's is close enough to get DRS as well, so it could well pay off for the Red Bull as well. Williams coming through to complete Sector 1, about 3/10 off of his best time through there, which on 7-lap-old soft tires is very, very quick. Most of these guys changing onto the soft tire from the midfield, but your race leaders, they've all gone onto the hard. So a difference in strategies between these guys who are locked in a battle and the people who are genuinely competing for the race win. Mizzo putting in a good lap so far through Sector 2, nice and tidy, but it's Hugo's who's doing the quickest times of this pair. Gap's down to just 4/10 between these two, and you won't get the move done before you enter the pits, but it'll be very, very encouraging to know that you have this level of pace on such old tyres, because we'll have the exact same scenario in around about 20 laps time. Mizzo then pulls across into the pit lane. Hugo's comes in behind. What kind of a stop will it be for the Williams? Will it all be clean? Can they get it stopped in the pit lane? I believe so. So no such silly penalties for the Williams. Hugo's pulls into the pit box. That one, of course, at the beginning of the pit lane. Williams right at the end, because they finished bottom of last year's constructors standings. Hard tyres fitted to the Williams. Comes out just ahead of the Red Bull. It's very, very close. Wow. You got your former race leaders coming down the straight. We're going to see Pan Pernick passing right now, but it's going to be so close between E-Coney. E-Coney's just going to lose out and spins. There was contact as they left the pit lane there. It was inevitable. It was absolutely inevitable. It's caused a safety car, and anybody who hasn't pitted is suddenly feeling like an absolute genius. Some idiot and Ruthful, they're already halfway around this lap, and we're going to have a safety car coming out, which means that none of these guys can catch them, so they might well get a free pit stop and come out in front of the leaders still. The other guy who is going to do well from this is Sven, Renault in P6, but let's take it back to that incident for a moment. It was always going to be more likely than ever. You had Mizzo who just missed out on their teammate and was already eyes forwards and pushing to close that gap. And then there was a car sweeping around the outside, a little bit of a touch on exit, I believe it was, and it was enough just to send him pivoting. And then I believe Klapek also picked up a penalty, potentially for track limits, as they tried to avoid the whole shenanigans.
Wasn't that crazy carnage? I'm surprised the medical car didn't come out, because that looked like he hit that wall. It's a huge impact there, but thankfully he's okay. He's probably hurt himself from slamming his hand onto the desk or something after crashing out. So, but, very exciting.
These wheels that they use, they are pretty strong. You have actually got to watch for the likes of broken wrists and similar, because if you hit the wall at high speed and you got your force feedback turned up high, it will bite you. They really do flip back. Now, that Haas are some idiot just leaving the pits. That was one of the people we thought could benefit from this, and it's not quite enough to take the lead of the race, but slots into the final podium position. They'll be very, very happy with that one. Safety car, we'll probably have a couple laps under it, so before we start talking about restarts and all that sort of stuff, I got a few facts for you. It can be a new segment, Tom's Track Trivia, Australia edition. So, this track, Albert Park, it took over from Adelaide in the year 1966. And Adelaide, of course, was always the last race of the season. However, Albert Park has been the first in every single year on the calendar, with the exception of 2. In 2006, it was third, to allow for the Commonwealth Games to take place in the city. And in 2010, it was second to Bahrain for various contractual reasons that are way too boring to care about. Michael Schumacher has the most Formula 1 wins here, winning in 2000 through to 2002 and again in 2004. But keep an eye on Lex Davison. You won't have heard of him, but he's won the Australian Grand Prix 4 times at 4 different circuits in the 50s and 60s, because the Australian GP has existed long before it became a Formula 1 championship race. Formula 1 cars, they came here in the 50s for non-championship races, and then it's existed every single year since that, just with various different formulae, the same way we talk about the Macau Grand Prix, when commonly it's only Formula 3 that race there. In terms of Formula One, McLaren are your most successful. They have 11 wins here in the Formula One year and 12 total. Whilst Ferrari, they've got 9 Formula Ones here and still 12 total. So a little bit of a duel. And if we'd come here again this year, well, Ferrari haven't turned out how we had expected them to, but they would have been hoping to kind of shut McLaren out from that one. Or maybe now it's the opposite way. Maybe McLaren are favourite to take the lead on that statistic. In terms of the lap itself, 70% of it is spent at full throttle, and your longest flat-out section is 0.8 of a kilometre. So the car's power units really put through their paces here, and we've seen that as the races open the calendar. There's commonly quite a few failures here. Some are indeed on the engine side. Normally, 58 race laps around this one, of course, 29 for our 50% race. And it came into matter earlier that the race pole position is on the left-hand side of the track. So that's on the racing line, and it can give you just that little bit more grip as you aim to get the best possible getaway. The cars, they're all grouped up behind the safety car now, so we should be going racing this time around. And who are you going to be keeping your eye on in the restart?
Mizzo, definitely, I think some idiot, good strategy. Well, some idiot's got the medium compound tyre. And obviously, all these guys can completely go to the end now. They've got all their tyres out of the way. They're all on mediums and hards. Lap 11 of 29. With it, like, I guess if you really don't overcook those mediums, you can make them go to the end. But that's some idiot on the mediums there. And Andy, in a P11. So, and then obviously 14th, 15th, 16th, and so forth further down the pack are on the mediums, because they obviously have to try to get past a whole bunch of cars, so they need that extra pace. Time penalty-wise, our leader has 3 seconds. I'll just run through it really quickly. P1 has 3 seconds. P5 has 3 seconds. P8 has 3 seconds. P9 has 3 seconds. P10 has 6 seconds. P12 has 3 seconds. P13 has 3 seconds. P14 has 9 seconds. P15 has 6 seconds. And then 3 seconds for 16, 18, and 19. And the rest have no penalties.
So that could very well come into play. It's going to be a late go from Panpernik. Slows them all the way down until he's actually in the final corner. It gets all squirrely as they're on the power. Already Vex it for P7. He's alongside Felix on the run down into turn 1. Can the Ferrari get it done? No. Cutback may become available though. Remember, no DRS as soon as you come back from the safety car. Leaves falling all over the place. That Ferrari slipstreaming the racing point in front. Attempt to get a move, but instead it's going to be Sven. Sven pushing down the inside of the second Ferrari of Vlasic. Not quite enough, however, on the outside. All the way around turn number 4, going to give the inside for turn 5, and the Ferrari might even lose out to Andy here. Andy trying to put an IndyCar style move on, where once you've been pushed out, you simply cannot get back inside. Almost got the double move done on Sven, but not quite enough. Now pushing down the inside of the Renault. This is a fantastic restart for Andy. Up into P8, around the outside at turn number 9, and credit where credit's due. He's currently in that position, but the Renault still on the outside. They run in towards turn number 11. Who's braver on the brakes? It's going to be the McLaren, but they'll be on the inside. That could compromise the run out. Of course, no DRS yet, and Andy just using plenty of overtake to make sure that he stays ahead of that move further up the field. However, Mizzo, he's not gone anywhere, and RR some idiot is also using those new tyres to good use, although a little bit of a lock-up from the Haas driver through the penultimate corner. Now we're through the final one. Still no DRS, but these guys do have overtake, and that's exactly what Mizzo's going to use, using that overtake button as we enter the straight, and attempt to get that little bit of a boost, and ultimately that may well have saved the place, because RR some idiot, he had a little look into turn 1, but it wasn't quite enough as the cars filter through that first complex, and now into turn number 3. It's very close to the top, and you can see the Haas is able to brake visibly later, but just cannot get alongside that classic blue and white Williams up ahead. Panpernik's trying to use all this. He's opened up about a 10th over the past lap, and whilst it's not a huge amount, it will be worth remembering. It's now up to half a second, and Mizzo needs to be eyes forward instead of looking in the mirrors if they want any chance of taking this race victory.
Absolutely crazy restart carnage there. Look at this, the separation basically in the top 9. If we go down to the 7 in the Renault. He's only 4.3 seconds off the leader right now. So look how close that they're all bunched up there. There's absolutely nothing between them, and everybody kind of got through there. I think there was just one retirement. Didn't quite catch what happened.
Yeah, there was a little bit of an incident coming into turn 1 after a restart, as you would expect. Safety cars do breed safety cars. Lockups from both Mizzo and some idiot in the penultimate corner. These guys are pushing as hard as they possibly can. The Haas managed to get alongside on the entry to the third and final sector, but it wasn't quite enough, and now DRS is enabled. This is where Pan Pernik's going to come under pressure, because Mizzo, of course, he'll have the DRS from the car in front, so he shouldn't have to worry too much more about that Haas behind him. But, of course, that DRS detection zone, it is in the final sector for both the home straight DRS and the DRS between turns 2 and 3. So we won't have it until we're in the final sector. So Pan Pernik, that might be a lifeline. Gap up to 0.5 of a second. It was almost 6 for a moment, but under braking, Mizzo pulls it back in. He's not going to let his teammate get away with this one. But a little bit of a mistake. He ran deep at turn number 6. That meant that he couldn't get the power on. And into 9, he's a half a second back. Ulas picks up another penalty, 5 seconds for speeding in the pit lane, and he's going to say that enough is enough, dropping out of the race. So we got 4 retirements so far, and Mizzo, this is the first opportunity. He'll have DRS now, and he'll look to close in his teammate. DRS open, no overtake being used, but it just allows him to close that gap in. It was 0.5, it's now 4.5. It'll open up a little bit again in this final sector, but he should be able to close it down in the home and the second straights.
You can see everybody there. There's a couple of little squabbling in the, behind them, but there's too much action on the track right now to try to catch everything that's going on. Some idiots obviously has to get past Mizzo as well, because he should have the faster tyre compound, so he's being held up and compromising his strategy, because if he has to get on with it and get up ahead of these hard runners, but obviously we can't see too much of a difference in time right now as they all are bunched together. So this is very certainly exciting. We're on lap 15, still lots of racing to go, almost halfway through now.
Yeah, and Mizzo there, pretty similar to what we saw in the first stint. Had the DRS, maybe could have sent one down the inside, but because it's the teammate in front, you can't put that kind of move on them. It needs to be something clean, and it needs to be something very, very decisive. You can't half go for it and kind of put the nose down the inside and hope that it works out, because it will just result in an intra-team collision, and as a result, some idiot is right there, as you said, got the grip at this stage, but in 2 or 3 laps it'll be those hard tyres that are much better, and now some idiot picks up a penalty, just pushing that a little bit too hard to find the run on the Williams. 3 seconds to some idiot. And that will now mean that if he wants to win this race, he needs to get in front and pull out somewhat of a gap. And that might distract him just a touch, because now he's got half a second to the car in front, but it's Hugo's in P4 who's pressuring. Red Bull trying to pick up a podium in the first race of the season here in Tier 1 of DMR. And it is as close as it can be. Your top 6 cars in a complete train behind one each other. And don't forget, NR Andy, it looks like he's a long way back. He's only 0.6 off of P6, so still within DRS range there. And all of these guys just dragging each other along, and it's Pan Pernik has the real hard job at the front of this one. Got it to match the pace without having access to that drag reduction system.
Exactly. And the penalty situation right now, at the way that they are close together as well, like, you know, as you said too, with Andy, I mean, he's gapped at P1. He's within 3 seconds of P1 right now, so any of these guys up ahead making any of these mistakes, they're going to get pounced on by all these guys that are bunching up here. So these leaders, if they do have time penalties, which the leader do, obviously Pan, he has to get at least a 3 second gap over Mizzo if he wants to taste the sweeter champagne, shall we say, on the top step of the podium. Down under.
I think in the world of esports, it's more likely to be the orange juice in his fridge, but we can go with champagne, maybe a little bit of maybe some soft drink of your choice. Champagne, quite expensive during lockdown, I would imagine, for most of our drivers. Pan Pernik, however, definitely pushing, like you mentioned, got that penalty and would drop them way, way down the order at the moment. She'd end up in P7 if you were the leader. So he's got to push, and that's why we're seeing the lockups everywhere. But it's Mizzo who's managing to push, gets alongside into turn number 1, gets a little bit deep though, and that's going to allow his teammate to fight back, gets to run all the way around the outside. however, still doesn't have the DRS. Instead, it's the two cars behind the leader that do. And now the Haas trying to split up those two Williams at the front. Not quite close enough to have a move into turn number 3. And both of those guys will feel like that was their opportunity. There might not be a better chance throughout this race than that. Was all the way alongside, and ultimately Mizzo made a mistake. They outbrake themselves. And this whole train, as a result of that, just gets that little bit closer together. In particular, Ruth in the Alpha for a moment was within a tenth of the Red Bull ahead. They're all nose to tail through here. They'll be able to draw an F1 diffuser from memory come the end of this race.
This is absolutely exciting, isn't it? Especially for the first race of this Tier 1 DMR. And there's absolutely nothing between these guys. We saw it in the qualifying. They're all equal on pace. Even though there's a little bit of different tyre strategy, it doesn't look like that the mediums at the moment are really making that much of a difference on the hard runners. So towards the end, I guess, at the end of the race, when these two mediums do wear a little bit more, this might help these hard runners as Mizzo locks up there. But they obviously have to remember about this penalty situation. But this is exciting, as you can see. All liners stand down as they cross the line and go into lap 18 of this 29-lap race.
Yeah, so let's just have a bit of a clarification on the penalty situation. We know the leader has one, but does anybody else in this battle have a penalty? As one of the McLarens there, in the background, gets a little bit sideways, trying to find a way past the racing point for P6, barges his way down the inside into turn 3, brakes late enough to get it done into 4, and that was a well-earned move. But now has to close that 8/10 gap to the car ahead before he can look to make any further ones, and that's the first time we've really seen these mediums coming into their own. That was done on the brakes into turn 4, where there's just more stopping power from that slightly softer compound. But yeah, coming back to the penalty situation, does anybody else in this top group have a penalty that could potentially help Pan Pernick out?
Yes, I will. There was just a little battle that was going on between Vetex in the Ferrari in P10 and SOR in the McLaren. So I think he made the move stick there, so the Ferrari moves up into the final points playing position. But no, that looks like the McLaren's going to come back at him side by side with the DRS open, makes it look easy. So the McLaren moves back up into the final points position at the moment in P10, but still he's the one that's obviously in that position. He's 2.3 seconds off that huge battle that you can see from P1 all the way down to P9. So penalty situations, yes, it will. Most of these guys actually have penalty situations. The person looking really good right now for the race win with no penalties is Mizzo in P2.
Yeah, so we'll have to keep that in mind, and this is why we see Pan Pernick pushing so hard, and potentially why we've seen Mizzo backing out of some of the moves. The race engineer that they have in game will be telling Mizzo this, and potentially they might be telling each other it as well. The only surprising situation here is that they're not letting Mizzo hit the front and try and drag Pan Pernick away with that DRS. Instead, they're driving as pretty much singular races as there. Eisen picks up a 3-second time penalty. That's not great for your P10 runner, however, I believe Vexit also has one in P11, so they're now fighting for position as opposed to whatever they were doing beforehand at the front. However, it's still an absolute train all the way down to 9th. However, the Renault of Sven just beginning to drop off the back of this a little bit. Once you lose that DRS, it's going to be so hard to catch these guys because they're gaining 5, 6, 7 miles an hour in a straight line on anybody who's not in this group, which over the course of a lap will help an awful lot. They all just seem so close together as they come to the penultimate corner there. They are so trusting of each other that they're not just going to suddenly brake too early, because then suddenly you'd have a huge pile-up, wouldn't you?
You would, and then obviously saying that penalty situations, the ones that are going to suffer the most are Klapex in P8. He has 12 seconds of time penalties, and that I'm on board right now with is in P5, the Alfa Romeo. He has 9 seconds of penalties, so these guys are not, they're going to be dropping out of points position at this rate unless they can get a move on and get it up the road. The other guys, obviously, as I said, like have a bit of a mix of time penalties, usually about 3 seconds on average, apart from Mizzo. So they're all going to be practically, obviously, finishing in those current positions that they are battling with the other drivers. So.
Yeah, and this might be why we're seeing no moves from the Alpha. The Alpha at some points has been definitely close enough to try something on the Red Bull ahead, but you know that ultimately it's just going to cost all of this group time, so you're going to drop further back towards the likes of Sven and Aizon and Vexit. So if you can avoid that, there's a chance you could salvage some points out of this one. But if you just slow everybody around you down, then it might just compromise yourself more than it compromises the guy you are trying to overtake. Van Pernick at the front, however, he's beginning to make a little bit of a break for it. That gap as big as we have seen it since the safety car period. 7 tenths for a moment, and then the DRS brings it back down to around about 4 3/4, 5 tenths. And then it will come down a little bit more in this intermittent straight between turns 2 and 3. But this is a definitive attempt from Van Pernick to try and get 3 seconds ahead. This is the break. They're using the tyres now.
Sorry to interrupt there. Looks like Danny was trying to make a move on the Ferrari, and that's Ferrari off in P14. So would that bring a safety car out? I don't believe so. Or maybe a virtual safety car. No. Yeah, it was trying to make a move there between... The Red Bull was trying to make a move past on the Ferrari. Just caught at the end of it. Not quite sure what happened, but I did see the Ferrari off into the grass. So that's cost him. Danny's up into P12, but not quite sure if he has any damage there on... Doesn't look like it on the Red Bull. Anyway, sorry, yeah, back up at the front there.
Yeah, Danny's gone away with that one. No real damage on him, and we won't see a safety car because Wazik, he got it moving again before there was any sort of danger, permanent danger caused to the circuit. At the front, however, that gap, it's coming back down again. Mizzo's responded. He's not going to let Van Pernick escape the DRS, and with only 8 laps left to go in this one, these guys are going to be right on top of each other, you'd anticipate. However, Van Pernick, it's up to 8 tenths. It seems like he's very, very strong through those last 2 corners in the lap. And maybe, just maybe, that gives him hope that he can eke out enough to salvage some number of points. 3 seconds now drops him into 6th. But remember, a bunch of the guys behind him also have penalties. So he could very easily be looking at a 3rd or 4th place finish here, which is still very, 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 very respectable. And a good place to build on. As remember, this is only race number 1 in the championship.
How do you think these tyres situation is going to go here for, let's say, some idiot or NR Andy in P6, as Clapp is not having a good day too with the penalties? Well, you know, Clapp in P8, he might get the award for the most penalty. They do hand out a trophy for that. So.
Yeah, in terms of the tyres, the hards will feel fine. Put simply, hard tyres don't go off. That is the whole concept of the hard tyre. If you're managing to wear out a set of hards, you should be looking at how you're driving the car because you're doing something very, very aggressively. The mediums, however, it's similar to what we saw with the softs when they were reaching 5 or 6 laps old. It's not that they're actually losing any grip at this stage, they're just losing the feeling in them. So you turn in and it doesn't feel as if it bites. However, you will still get around the corner at the same speed. So it's more a lack of confidence at the moment that the tyres will be giving, and in 2 or 3 laps from now, then they'll really begin to degrade and fall away from you.
As the McLaren driver, and Andy there makes the pass on the Alfa Romeo.
On the Alfa Romeo, yeah. So Andy, he's been the only one to really be able to take advantage of this group. We saw he got past Felix Lundberg and then Klapek, and now he's up into P5, having gotten past Ruthful in the Alpha, but now there's a little bit of a gap up to Hugo's. That one 1.4 seconds at the moment, but you'll be hoping that Hugo's gets held up behind the car ahead of him, and he can begin to bring that gap down, and that's exactly what he's doing. It's already 1.3 just a couple corners later, so there's a chance that he can get within DRS range come that DRS detection point at the end of the lap.
And we have a McLaren that's made a spin or something. That's back down at P12 SOR. So, yeah, he's lost at least 4 positions there. Not quite sure what happened. Also, does he have any damage? He's cut the corner anyway, coming out of there deliberately. So he's not a happy camper in that McLaren right now. But, yeah, these battles up ahead are still going crazy.
Yeah, and as for the leaders, if you're talking 3 seconds of penalties being the kind of the generalized number, it's all gotten a little bit better for those guys as they've managed to keep up this pace. Sven's now almost 5 seconds back in P8, so most of these guys will be maintaining their positions as they manage to open up a gap to the chasing pack. At the front, it's all still pretty close, but it's Hugo's who seems to have the best chance at making progress as it stands. Those mediums on the Haas of some idiot may be beginning to fall away a little bit now. Just the gap ahead of him opening up, it's now 7/10 of a second. The gap behind him, it's coming down a little bit, so he'll be under threat over the next few laps. You can guarantee that, because he's not one to shy away from a battle, to put it that way.
Yeah, it's interesting now because we've seen that all be within under a second, all within DRS now. As you said, a little bit of a gap starting to form there. That Hugo's got an advantage, and he's actually getting a lot closer now to some idiot. It's probably one of the closest battles in the front runners right now, apart from Claps in P7. But Claps has got so many time penalties, he's going to drop a lot back down. Looking at Hugo's time penalties, he has 3 seconds, so he's looking pretty comfortable there. A lot of the drivers have 3 seconds. He needs to get past some idiot. Who is also on 3 seconds of time penalties, so obviously where he can make the move on track will be the final position. Both of those guys too will, if they can keep within, actually no, that they won't. They will still finish in the position. Mizzo will swap with Pan. The leader will swap with P2 at the moment, like with that penalty situation, pending that Mizzo doesn't pick up any penalties himself.
Yeah, and Mizzo won't know that. You can guarantee that the Williams will be just kind of playing it cool, making sure that everything stays within track limits, because the threat from that Haas behind has just kind of died away. So now you weren't so much talking about threat from the Haas in terms of losing the position, because you'd still have no time penalties, so you'd get it back on the line. You're more talking about the threat in terms of when they go for the overtake, there's a higher risk of contact in that scenario than any other. So that's died away. They can now just focus on staying within range of the car ahead. It's all those behind that need to really get their acts together as we get to this final part of the race. Hugo's was within 2/10 of a second for a moment there, then drops back out. It's Klafek. He wants that award. He's now up to a whopping, what's that, 15 seconds worth of time penalties?
24 seconds.
24. I do apologise.
And
it
saying
was
which,
even bigger.
he's pulled off to the side of the road as well too. So I don't know what's going wrong there. Is it just letting everybody pass, or is there a problem with the Mercedes? That'd be interesting.
I would imagine that would just be a concession at this stage. 24 seconds means that you're just way off the back of the field, and he'll be aware of that, because ultimately if he was to pit at that stage, then he would have come out outside of the points anyway. So knowing that you have more time penalties than a pit stop actually is, you might as well just pack it in.
He's boxing. Maybe he was going to try to go for the fastest lap or something, but he is outside that anyway to pick up the fastest lap. Maybe he just wants to do it, obviously, just for bragging rights. As you see drivers can do that. Mizzo is still putting the pressure there on Pan, but as we know, and as Claire Williams on the pit wall, his engineer actually, Claire Williams, might not be the one talking to him on the radio, but saying just hang within the 3 seconds, like, this race is yours, just keep it clean, don't pick up. And when I race engineer some of my drivers, it's the same sort of thing. I'm like, stay off the curbs, keep it clean, this race is yours, just you cannot afford to pick up a penalty. But at the same time, these guys are racers, and they don't always listen to their engineers, and they want to pass people on track even though when they don't have to.
Yeah, and ultimately for Mizzo, it's beginning to swing the other way once again. We talked about the threat from that Haas having gone away a little bit. Now it's beginning to come once again. So the gap's evening out once more, and Hugo's, as a result, just a little bit further back from the Haas ahead. Instead, it's Andy. Andy, like we saw, has been the one to make the moves as the cars behind have fallen away. And somehow, on those 17-lap-old medium tyres, he's now got himself within DRS of Hugo's. So keep an eye out for Andy. He'll be looking to try a little bit of a lunge potentially into one of these big braking zones early on in the lap, come potentially the last time around this circuit.
An absolute good pace too. His last lap, 1:23.5, was faster than all these guys that are running at the front. So he about 3 tenths faster, and just 3 seconds penalties as well. He's looking good for a point, even possibly even a podium. Is it up there at least? So he's got to get past Hugo for sure.
Yeah, he'll just be focusing on what he's got to do right now, and he's fallen away just a little bit in that middle sector, but that shouldn't matter too much because you're not looking to make the move this early. So now you just slipstream, try and get the back the gap back down, and we know that the McLaren driver has been mighty in this final sector. You can see the gap there, just about hovering, which is very, very good when you consider the dirty air effect. It's not just the Red Bull in front, but also the Haas and the two Williams ahead of that. So you'll be doing so well to get that car stopped and turned into each of these corners. The drivers all just beginning to close up to one another once again, the pace increasing potentially a little bit. And it's all about these last 2 laps now. Will anybody be brave enough to try something? Can RR some idiot hold on to what was ultimately a gifted 3rd place? Remember, he popped out into that one as a result of the safety car that was caused when Coney was involved in this battle, and that feels like so long ago that we've almost forgotten about the AlphaTauri driver who was up there. Both AlphaTauris have ended up retiring this one, so it's not a great day for them. Everyone else with retirements is looking pretty solid, apart from Mercedes, and Klafek does manage to set fast this lap. No point for it unless you're inside the top 10, of course, so he'll be maybe hoping that a few of these top guys take each other out within this last lap, and he can pick up 1 or 2 points as a result of all that. Hugo's, he's lacking a little bit in terms of electrical energy. Using overtake a lot in this train in an attempt to get the move done on some idiot ahead, but that could leave them vulnerable to Andy behind. Andy's got plenty more electrical energy available to them, and apparently not plenty more tires, and he goes very, very deep. The leaders come across the line to start our final lap of the race. We've got a 5-way battle at the front. Not necessarily all these guys competing for the race win. Currently it's Mizzo who's in an effective P1 when all time penalties are taken into consideration. But we're keeping our eye on Andy. He's so close to the back of these guys. Mizzo won't try and move. RR some idiot. He'll just be clinging on to try and survive this. It's Hugo's and Andy. They've got everything to gain and a little bit to lose, but certainly not as much as the guys already on the rostrum as it stands. That's the first sector already done, and the pace is blisteringly quick at this stage. It's been increased by about 1/10, 2/10 over the past couple laps as the guys use all of that fuel and ERS and the very last of the grip the tyres have to offer. Andy's fallen away a little bit. He's not been able to capitalise on the Red Bull ahead. Instead, Hugo's is pushing all the way up to the back of the Haas. He'll try and get a good run through 11 and 12. He follows very, very nicely there. And then you'll have the DRS down into the first of these double rights. He's not close enough into 13. You won't get it done into 14. It's going to be the last corner or bust for the Red Bull. Can he make a miracle maneuver on the final lap of the race? He brakes as late as he dares, but it's not quite going to be close enough. Pan Parnick will come across the line in P1 for Williams, but it's going to be his teammate Mizzo who takes the race on aggregate time. RR some idiot picks up a well-earned 3rd position. Then you got Hugo's and Andy rounding out your top 5. Point scores for Alfa Romeo through Ruffroll, Renault through Sven, Racing Point through Felix Lundberg, Ferrari through Vexit, and then potentially another score for Ferrari from Wazik, but we'll wait to see when those guys come across the line to make sure that the penalties are all resolved. And wow, what a race we had. We had safety cars, we had overtakes, we had battles off the line, and ultimately you'd have to say the correct guys came out on top.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely brilliant, exciting racing. Wheel-to-wheel action. I have not seen that in a lot of league races in some time. So, and I'm super happy that those are the results. And yeah, good on him too, because it takes a lot of strict. There's your driver of the day there with Felix in the Racing Point. Now Felix was P8, finished in P8. Yeah, it takes a lot of concentration and like just skill to be able to keep your car out of the penalty situation, especially with these guys are wheel-to-wheel racing, as you've seen. There was nothing between them. Easy just to make a little bit of a mistake, or if a car ahead of you brakes a little bit too quickly, and then, you know, then compromises your entry or exit into the corner, and then you get that penalty. But well-deserved champagne. I don't think he's going to be pulling any shoeies down under. But look at that. So it's dominating, isn't it, from the Williams drivers? And let's have a look at those positions.
Yeah, your winner then, Mizzo for Williams. It's a 1-2 for the team as Pan Pernick picks up, giving them almost the maximum number of points. RR some idiot He gets third for Haas, and then he goes, fought hard, but it wasn't quite a podium for the Red Bull. And he completes your top 5 at McLaren after making a few daring overtakes on the second stint, while Russo fought hard for that 6th position. Your top 10 rounded out by Sven in Renault, Felix for Racing Point, Vexit for Ferrari, and Danny Coe picking up the final point scoring position on aggregate time. It's been a fantastic race, and well, you couldn't ask for much more to start off the season, could you?
Certainly not. I've certainly enjoyed myself, and we got the little ability there to use some of the new graphic overlays, and I hope that that helps the audience at home, wherever you're watching it from, to see whether or not it can provide you a little bit more useful information, obviously, about those penalties and things like that as we were riding on board with cars. And that's some new features, shall we say, and improvements that we're going to be having with DMR, that we hope to try to provide you and try and be as professional as the broadcasts even are with the F1. Well, if not even better. I wish it would be better than the regular F1 broadcast. But yeah, absolutely been a pleasure. And as usual, Tom, your commentary work has been exceptional.
Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. That's just about going to round it all out, I believe. You can find us. We'll be back next week. That's going to be us at Bahrain, following what was supposed to be the F1 2020 calendar. Of course, everything in real life has gone to chaos, but we'll be back here on the Delta Motor Racing YouTube on August 5th for Bahrain. August 12th will be Vietnam. August 19th, China. And I'm sure you'll catch up to us before then so that we can give you the rest of the calendar when it is relevant. Thank you very much, Biggles, for doing everything that you do and for being a fantastic co-commentator. And thank you to everyone who tuned in and listened and who is tuning in at a later date on YouTube as well. You guys are just as important. I've been Tom Davis. This has been